Just trying to figure out why my teeth had to clear.
Hello and welcome to Shades in Justice podcast. I'm your host, Dr. Evelyn Hill, and you can always catch me at www.drevelynhill.net. Well, we got a fantastic show on tonight. We have the one and only Laticia Hernandez, and she is a powerhouse all the way from the Kansas City, Kansas area. She has worked in many areas around the city and in different parts of the country. And we are just excited that she is a part of our podcast and radio show on this evening. Miss Laticia, welcome.
Hey, how are you?
Hi. So good. Well, hey, Letitia, do you mind just sharing with our audience a little bit about you, kind of where you grew up and the kind of work you do and the lives that you have changed?
So my name is Laticia Bell Hernandez. I grew up in the Kansas City, Kansas area. Um, my line of work, I am a graphic designer, and I also have done some motivational speaking. I've done some radio, and I like speaking to the youth, especially young women, just about life in general and, how to protect themselves from things that are going on in the world.
Well, thank you, Miss Letitia, for introducing yourself. And yes, ma'am, I consider you one of the greatest graphic designers and talk show hosts in America. So just so you know, you high on my list here in Kansas City, Kansas, and across the country, as far as I'm concerned. We've traveled together with the Board of Education, and what a pleasure it was to just be in your presence. Now, tonight we have a little bit of a heavy topic. We're going to be talking about sexual assault, the injustice of sexual assault. And I want you to just be comfortable and free about sharing whatever you want to share in the arena. I do have some questions lined up for you, and you can talk about a friend or something that happened with somebody else if you are uncomfortable with revealing information about yourself. So I just wanted you to know that. So, first of all, let me give you just a few stats that I found was that according to the Charlie Health editorial team reviewed by Don Gasparini, PhD, April 2023, sexual assault include any type of sexual contact or behavior that occurs without clear consent, such as rape, um, victims have unwanted sexual touching, and etc. 50% of women and 30% of men have experienced sexual violence between the ages of 12 and 34. Letitia, do you know of any friends or relatives or associates who you know that have experienced any of these sexual assaults?
Yes, I actually have. So, like 90% of the women that I speak to have actually gone through some type of a sexual assault, whether it be someone touching them, somebody sexually harassing them verbally, or whether it be physically someone actually sexually assaulting them. Not only have I had friends and family members, I've also been assaulted myself. So I am very familiar, with what's going on with sexual assault. I look at it like, I mean, at first I was looking at it like, oh, maybe it was just me. But, the more experience that I get, I seem to feel like it's literally 90% of women, and most of the time it's done by like a cousin or an uncle, a father, so or close family friend. It's always somebody, close to the family. And typically it happens between the ages of 8 years old all the way up to maybe 35 years old. Um, I've just experienced so many different stories, and the more I tell my story, then the more people start coming out. And
Mm-hmm.
I'm not gonna say that it feels good, but it just it seems a little more familiar to me now that there is actually a problem with men and sexual assault. But nowadays as well, with women and sexual assault, I have a couple of guy friends who were actually assaulted as well. And when I listen to their story, I really cannot believe that, women also take advantage of men. So I mean, I have a very well-rounded group of friends, associates, and just people that I've witnessed go through this.
Mm-hmm. Well, thank you for your candidness, and you are right. It's not limited to women. It's men and women, and we'll dig more into some of those statistics in just a little bit. Um, and you said something that really struck home. You said many of the assaults are folks that they know, a cousin, a brother, or
Right.
you know, friend, some just all of a sudden that individual uh, gets a buzz in their spirit, and then they just desire a particular person, and then they just commit this violent act. And then you also mentioned that even in your story, um, it's not one that is a secret that and you mentioned between the ages of 8 to 34, and my initial comment from this uh, editorial team said from 12 to 34. So when you said 8 to 34, that really opened up my eyes even more, because more and more really young girls are being sexually assaulted. And um, many don't say a word, a few do say something, and then often when they do say something, people don't believe them. So, any comments about the ages with this 8 to 12 or 12 to 34-year-olds being sexually
Um,
assaulted?
so so pretty much the reason why I came up with that number is I know that I myself I was my journey of molestation started at around 8 years old. Um, and there's a lot of people that say, oh, they can remember back to when they were 3 or, but I think in the age range of maybe 8 years old and up is where you can actually remember the actions that were being taken, identify with the mistakes, like this is really wrong, like, and things like that. So the reason I chose 8 is because, like I said, it was a personal experience of mine that happened by a close friend of the family. And it's just age, I guess age just really doesn't make a difference. People out here that have sexual fetishes or desires, you know, they don't pick a person, they don't pick an age. They just, they act on what's in front of them.
Mm-hmm.
And so then anybody can easily become a victim.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And I've talked to women over the years also that have been attacked at various ages, and men. And I'll just stop right here since you mentioned men a few minutes ago. I remember when one of my male cousins was sexually assaulted by my aunt's boyfriend. And my great aunt, who they were living with, once she found out what was happening, she commanded this guy to never come back to the house. But my
Right.
aunt, but my aunt, on the other hand, which was her aunt also, she continued to see this guy, even though she knew that her son accused this guy of raping him. Because, and I assume this because he gave her money or, whatever. But
Yeah.
it seems like it's so difficult when you're in love with somebody and they now have taken advantage of your child. It's so hard to still disconnect from that individual because you love them, but you love your kid too, but it's almost like you hope your kid is lying, so you just assume that they are. Any feedback on those comments? What have you heard or experienced in that arena?
I mean, I guess that it would probably be very, very hard to believe a child, um, believe that something has happened to a child by a person whom you love. Like, I think that's the worst thing for a person to ever admit. Like, um, in my situation, one of my family members, it was very hard for them to even believe the fact that that happened to me. And they couldn't even understand, like, why this happened. And they thought I was lying. So, um, being being able to stand your ground and be called a liar, be called fast, or be called and how do I say this? It's sort of like when if you're going through some traumas in your life and they feel like you just want to use that as an excuse to smooth your problems over.
Mm-hmm.
And what people need to know is that when these types of things occur in your life, it's very difficult for you to begin to even start to live life as a normal person because you have so many insecurities about what happened with you, about how people are going to accept you. And the bottom line is that when something like this happens to a person and it's by a person that's loved by the majority of your people, then life becomes very horrible for you
Yes, yes.
because it seems like they begin to protect the person,
Mm-hmm.
you know, and you know these people, they get away with it. It's so many men and women out there that get away with it because of the relationships that they have with family members or friends. And
Mm-hmm.
then the person that the victim is actually left to really actually believing, well, maybe this is my fault. Maybe I brought this on myself.
Right,
Why,
right.
like why would they believe other people over me? And it just makes you want to get up in a ball and just don't come out.
Right, right. I did some reading and have felt, this way myself from time to time about the mental health component that is affected because of sexual assaults. And one of the things I found out is several people really can, beside going through this extreme depression that they go through, they in some cases have suicidal thoughts and some have committed suicide because of the rejection, the insecurity, the guilt, the shame, all of that. And it's just a tough, tough pill to swallow. And so that's why we're here on tonight. Number one, to offer hope. There is hope. There is, in my
Yeah.
opinion, a special grace that God gives to men and women who have uh, had to endure sexual assault. And I believe that the Lord still is able and willing to give you whatever you need if you're able to embrace his love and gentleness and kindness. And then often what happens when people are sexually assaulted, we ask the question, God, why did you allow this to happen to me? And I think the first thing we need to remember is the scripture that says, the devil comes but to kill, steal, and destroy. It is the enemy that does this. It is, and the enemy is the devil. It is not the Lord. And then somebody may say, well, it was one of my church members who did the sexual assault, or it was my pastor or my bishop or something like that. Still, it comes from the spirit of the devil. I don't care what title the person has.
Yeah.
That's something to remember. Um, so I'm glad you brought in that part, because it's a traumatic experience. And one of the things you mentioned, which uh, I have been called in my younger days, was get your little fast tail over here, and if you bring your little tail in front of me again, I'm gonna do this, this, and this. And I didn't know I was being fast, but that's what they call me. So um, you're right. It's a lot that goes on, and then the effects later is just tremendous. So the two twin towers that I talk about in one of the books that I wrote, Grace Over Rape, is guilt and shame. And you mentioned that, you know, the mental effects behind what happens, the insecurities, and the insecurities bring about the guilt and shame. Now, first of all, you, an 8-year-old, you have nothing to be ashamed of and nothing to be guilty about. It's the predator who ought to carry guilt and shame. And isn't that something, how the devil would transfer his stuff onto the victim instead of the predator? Comments?
Yep. Yep. Every single time, even as an adult, you deal with it. So, there's an old saying that says, like, honestly, I truly believe that God did bless me with like a husband, so a steady person, so I wouldn't have to, keep reliving the trauma and just dealing with certain things. Because, like I said, the insecurities they build up. Like,
Yes.
you begin to feel like you're not worthy. You feel like, oh, I'm dating a guy, but I'm really not a virgin. Yeah, I've had some sexual experience. Some women become very promiscuous. Some women, like I myself, I think that I feel like if I wasn't married, I'd probably be like one of those people who just, I probably would have ran through a lot of men and just like pretty much treated them like nothing, like, oh, on to the next, on to the next, on to the next. And, I don't care, because you're steady trying to find that, that medium to where you're saying, okay, I got my revenge back. I got my lick back. And, it's definitely something to deal with, because, building a relationship with someone can be very hard when you have issues. And you were talking about like the depression and then not feeling worthy and all of the insecurities. I mean, it's so many insecurities. And then you got like people, close friends and family members, who are telling you like what you're like. You know what I mean? Like, they would say, like, to me, they would say, oh, you're just this woman, you get this, that, like, like, you just get all these things from men, and you're this, you're that. And I feel like you don't know anything about me. Every man I come in contact with doesn't mean I'm a sexual person. I do believe that men have to work 10 times harder with me probably than another woman. Because most of the time I'm not at all concerned about the sex. Like, sex is, I mean, that's one thing that has been blocked. And, that can cause issues in marriages and things like that, because, you don't want to be sexually active because of what
Uh-huh.
happened to you. You go into a
Mm-hmm.
shell, you ball up, and you just, you don't even discover who you don't even have time to discover who you are, because it's almost like, oh, life has already chosen me. It's already, I've already got my understanding of an experience. So, it just causes a lot of problems,
Mm-hmm.
lots of problems. And, most of the time in teenagers, they run away, they become rebellious, they get promiscuous, and adults are very withdrawn.
Yes.
Um, they
Mm-hmm.
don't know how to have a relationship. Um, they don't understand like what love really is. So is love a sexual experience, or is love? Like, what is it? You know what I
Mm-hmm.
mean? So
Mm-hmm.
it's just so much that goes into that. I can go on and on like with the experiences that I've had, but it's definitely something that women need to talk more about,
Mm-hmm.
and we need to educate our children more on it. And we need to let them know what's right and what's wrong. And we also need to let them know that it's okay to have boundaries with men. And it's okay to go tell your mom that a man is touching you without fear. Because if you
Yes.
have fear,
Mm.
then you're not going to tell nobody. It's going to be bottled up inside of you, and there's never going to be an end to it.
Right, right. I love that. Be able to talk to a parent without fear, a parent or another adult without fear. Um, and I remember as a kid, um, things that happened to me, I never told anybody. Um, uh, and so, and I guess it was fear. I was so young. I don't, I was so young, but I didn't tell anybody. And it was in the midst of me going through the sexual assault a couple of years ago with my podcast that some memories that I had forgotten that happened to me years ago bounced back. And so I didn't even realize that I had, and we do that. We put it in a certain category in our brain. Uh, we push that to the side so we don't have to think about it. So you're
Yeah.
right. It is, it's something to think about. Let's talk more about how do we prepare our children. One of my granddaughters had an incident when she was really, really young, and I tried to talk to her about it, and she refused. She said, "Grandma, I just don't want to talk about it." I said, "Okay," and so I didn't press her into it because I wanted her to feel comfortable once she did it, but she never did share it with me. But she told me now she goes to a therapist. Well, that is great, but I just wonder, how do we present ourselves as parents and grandparents, saved or unsaved, church to unchurched? How do we present ourselves to our young people so that they know we're not going to judge them. It's not their fault. We're not going to beat them up. How do we do that, Laticia? That maybe this would be a really good time for us to pay attention to you uh, and really hear how we can help our young people by first of all listening to.
Yeah, I mean, first up, I don't honestly, I think that a child should never go. If you see a child that is being very withdrawn, that should not go unnoticed. You need to have conversations with your children and grandchildren on a regular. I mean, because life is so busy nowadays and everything is so expensive that mothers are working more than they ever have. And
Mm-hmm,
it's really hard to keep up with every single thing that a child does or what happens to them.
mm-hmm,
But women, if you have a man living in your home and you have girls, I have three daughters, 21, 19, and 25. And the golden rule for me was, with my husband, It's okay for a gathering, but I really don't think that men should be hanging out at your house. And I mean, these are probably some of the things that are personal for me, but it's very important that you do your research and, don't be so easy to trust, men around your children, because you have girls and men have that thing that they can't control, supposedly, and things can get out of hand. So what I did was I talked to my girls. We had, as soon as they 8 years old was the time I started having sexual conversations with them, because if it happened to me at 8, it could have happened to them. It could happen to them. It could happen to any child. I tell them, hey, nobody's supposed to touch you here. Nobody's supposed to talk to you this way, that way. If something happens, you come get your mother, whether it be your uncle, whether it be your cousin, whether it be your dad, whether it be your whoever, uncle. It does not matter. If somebody's having an inappropriate conversation with you, even if they start to look at you and question little small things or play a little too rough or too much with you, those are red flags. You need to come tell me. Mm-hmm. And then I'm going to do my investigation and see what's going on, because if you don't, the less you pay attention to your children, the more somebody else is paying attention to them. Mm-hmm. And most of the time, most of the time it's not for a good reason. So you always need to talk to your children, make sure they're educated on what friendliness is and what perverted things are. There's a difference. There's a difference between caring and just trying to get something out of it. There's a big difference. I mean, another thing, I know that the world we live in today is so different, that girls they dress so
provocative.
So provocative. Oh my God. I'm like, I wouldn't even wear that to bed. Like, you're wearing that outside? And I have the girls, and they're coming up in this, and it's just a natural thing for them to wear the body cons and the short and the little bitty shirts, and it's just, but I mean, the way that they're set, this world has been set up to just invite all of those things. I mean, these women are mad and saying, what is a man looking at? But you're giving them every single thing that you have. You need to watch the way you dress. Be very, very presentative. You have to represent yourself correctly. And I tell my girls that all the time. If I'm going woo when I see you, imagine what a man is saying.
Exactly. Yes.
You definitely need to watch how you present yourself to people. So, I mean, the clothing, number one, for teenagers, I think parents really need to pay more attention to what their daughters are wearing. I pay huge attention, and I tell, and sometimes with older children that are grown, you can't control what they wear, but you can remind them, you're going out like this. That's giving me an all ground to look, grab, touch, see, lust in their minds. And it starts with a thought in their head, and then it just goes. Yes. So, present yourself properly. That's it. That's just what it is. You have to present yourself properly. You have to talk to your children on a daily basis. You have to be a representative yourself. So you have to literally practice what you preach. Watch who you keep around your children. Definitely watch the company you keep. Whether it be a man or a woman, you just never know. Whether it be a close one, brother, uncle, cousin, sister, you have to prepare them for like the sickest things that you could even imagine happening, because it happens.
Absolutely.
And I'd rather a child be prepared than not be prepared. So with that being said, spend more time with your children, educate your children, and make
Mm-hmm.
sure that they have a clear understanding of what sexual assault is. There's
Mm-hmm.
a difference.
Mm-hmm.
And that's pretty much all in a nutshell. So
Well,
there's a difference.
that's really good. I love what you talked about. Beware of how you dress. Now, are you one of those real churchy conservative types where you want all the young girls to wear dresses down to their ankles and no lipstick and no earrings and never get your hair done? Are you one of those?
No, I am not. I feel like every woman should be liberated and they should be able to feel free how they want to feel. But only thing I'm saying is do it within moderation. I did not like to wear the long dresses down to my knees, no lipstick, da 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 da. I mean, and there's some women that are just so naturally built, that it doesn't even matter. Even if they put the long dress on down to their
That's
ankles,
right.
it's still gonna show.
Yeah.
So you can't hide from it. And I probably was one of those people to where, anything that I wore. And the reason I feel that way is because, my sister and I, when we went into church, we would have on our church clothes and everything. We were never disrespectful, but the women still saw it as, when you're walking down, women be mindful of what you're wearing, because when you're walking down there to put that money in that collection plate, you got pastors and deacons up in the pulpit, and it's like, they shouldn't even be thinking about nothing like that. But a man is a man, and I do understand that.
That's right.
But
Yes.
but I mean, I think it's okay to dress nice and conservative. You don't have to be too bougie, but be mindful of what you wear. You know
Yes.
what goes in the bedroom and what goes outside. You know what you look like. You know what I mean? You know what type of
Right.
body parts you have. You know. So, and I just feel like this. If you're dressed in a certain type of way, it's definitely to get some attention. Because
Yeah.
why are you wearing it? Like, why do you have that on? And the big secret is to all the great men out there, they're looking for some imagination. They just don't want to see it. I mean, once they see it all, they get to thinking all kind of thoughts. Oh, well, she's easy. I can walk up to her and say, hey, want to go get a room tonight? Those are just some of the things you have to think about. And then women get really offended. But we have to learn how to stop setting ourselves up for that
That's
as
good.
well.
Yeah, that's good. We have to learn how to not set ourselves up for sexual assaults. So
Exactly.
that's a good point. And I asked that question knowing you were not one of the real conservative individuals, but someone might think that because of the wisdom that you have exposed on tonight about how important it is to be free to be you, but do it in moderation. Because we all could, show a whole lot more. We all could, but does that reflect really who we are and what attention are we really looking for? So those are a couple of things I was thinking about. So here's a couple more things I wanted to talk about. Some information I got was 2%, 2 to 8% of child athletes experience sexual abuse. 90% know their abuser. So I had been just watching TV over the years, and I've noticed several of the African American as well as white and Asian uh, athletes, especially the gymnasts, have experienced sexual abuse by their coaches. Have any of your friends or kids or associates ever talked to you about this arena of uh, young women in sports?
Not more so of the coaches, but I do remember in particular, like a principal, you know, and it was sort of like you getting into some trouble. Well, I noticed that I got into some trouble at school. I got into a fight, and I went into the principal's office, and he's like, "Oh, I'm not going to suspend you. You know," and he just inappropriately talked about how I was dancing on the drill team, and you know how I'm like, you know, one of their best dancers, and he doesn't want to put me out, and you know, it just felt uncomfortable. I didn't know where he was going with that. Teachers, especially the younger teachers that are teaching the high school students. And the teachers are getting younger and younger. So you have a 27-year-old man, he's teaching a high school student. I had a kid in my class who got out of high school when she was a senior, and she married like the basketball coach, straight out of high school. Yeah. So, I mean, and I just thought to myself, like, what right does he even have? She wasn't even able to live her life yet, you know?
Wow. Yeah.
And
Yeah.
they just see, you know, they're infatuated with the looks, the body, and everything, and they tend to forget that mentally we are still children. You know,
Right.
we still
Exactly.
need to grow. And I just think that, yeah, you know, in professional atmospheres, sports, and things like that, they're taking advantage. You got spots that you want to get here and there, and you have teachers propositioning you for those spots. And if you do this, then hey, I'll do that. And not even if you do something, I'm going to go ahead and push you up there because I think you so fine. You know, it just starts there,
Yes.
and then it
Yes.
starts
Yes.
going and going and going. And
Uh-huh.
then it puts you, you know, they get away with it easier because then they're putting you in they're setting you up to already have that frame of mind. Oh, he
Yeah.
thinks I'm cute. Oh, I'm so much younger than him, but he's still interested in me. I think that's cute, and he's fine, you know, and then you just get drawn in.
Yeah. It's
So it's
easy. Yeah.
easy.
Hmm. And you know that the young girls are immature, and you know, even though it's a little uncomfortable, it still is kind of exciting and all of that. And do they go and tell mom? Because say the coach says to the student, hey, this is just between you and me, but if you are able, if I put you here, I may be requiring a little extra from you, never really defining what extra means. So we have to be just so very, very careful. I love what you said about parents talk to your kids every day. So I would talk to my kids every day. However, it wasn't a nice talk. I was threatening them. Tell, I
Well,
was,
you got to do a little bit of both.
yeah,
I mean, threatening to threaten them is one thing, but you know, you have to have a, you know, my parents probably threatened me, you know, and she said, "Oh, if you're having sex, you're gonna do this and that, blah blah blah, and you're gonna get out of my house and da 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 da." And I'm thinking to myself, like, I've already been there, done that. So if you want me to get out, I'm just gonna get out. And then you know, with teenage girls, it just invites so many things. Like as parents, not only do we have to talk to our children, but we need to know how to talk to them. And
exactly.
you know, my my oldest daughter, we went through a thing to where I thought I was the perfect parent for her. And
Mm,
then I had to she kind of told me that no, you weren't. Like you talked to me like I was crazy. Like that really broke my spirit, my heart, and my this and my that. And she wanted to go through therapy, and we did. And then I had to understand, like, yeah, I was talking to her, but I was yelling it to her, like.
I see.
And so, but
Yes.
you know, with every child, you have a different experience because every
Hmm.
child's on a different level. And I think that, you know, as parents and as me going through that experience, that we need to learn how to talk to our children and not talk at them. So
Very
every
good.
day,
Yeah. Yes. Because I
every
I
day.
just I didn't do a good job, and I was ripping and running back and forth. I had a job, and then for a while I was in school and going to church, and so it was you know, I wish I had had these kind of talks when I was a young mom and could have, just revealed more love and caring and acceptance and less threatening and all of that. So thank you for your wisdom in how you are sharing with all of us some good things to think about. These are great tools to help parents as they navigate helping their daughters and sons grow up. Here's a couple last two, three comments. The LGBTQ demographic is 4 times more susceptible to violent victimization than non-LGBTQ individuals. So, what is your response around that? One of the things that I've noticed since I've been in the nonprofit arena here in Kansas City, Kansas, is more and more kids get kicked out of the home because they are identifying as a different gender or they have a same-sex relationship with someone, and so therefore the parents are kicking them out, so they become homeless, and now while they're homeless they're being victimized. It's a rough world out here. So what are some of your comments around that whole arena?
If you, I mean, if you have a child that is curious, and they do get curious, I remember my youngest child. I remember her like starting to cut her hair off on her own and just doing different little things. And she wanted to join the LGBT community, as a stud, female stud. And I felt that I failed somewhere as a parent. But in all actuality, we really have to think about the world that our children are being raised in today. They have way too many choices. They have way too many choices. And it's in their face. It's literally like when you turn on the TV, there's 2 gay people. And
yes,
nothing against the LGBT community. I don't have anything against it. I will say this. I think that our children should have been able to explore and figure out things on their own. I don't think that it should have been pushed in their face the way that it was. But I will say this. I wouldn't change any of it for the world. It just because they're LGBT does not mean that they're not regular people. I feel like they're easily victimized because of the racism of it's just racist, like straight against gay, if it versus black against white or whatever color against whatever color. Now it's straight against gay. And a lot of straight people are cruel. They victimize them. But then you have a lot of older people that are gay that victimize the younger gay people. So, it's sort of like an initiation of them turning them out or something. And I just feel like accept your children for who they are. They still need to be educated. Period.
Yes.
And I do feel like the LGBT community is a lot more free than anyone else. And I just think that, they're assaulted a lot because they're hated.
Yeah.
And your children need to be educated. And if you have a child that is a part of the LGBT community, do not mistreat. Educate and still love them the same as you love your other children. It could be a phase. Mistreating and kicking a child out is basically throwing them to the wolves, is basically throwing them out there. Go get victimized. Or go do what you're doing that's wrong and continue to do it. I don't care about you. Parents need to know that when they do that, they're just pushing them towards more destruction. So, I mean, in today's world, I think we have to learn how to accept if that's what they're going to do, and still talk to our children, educate them on how to protect themselves, whether you're straight or you're or gay, either or. You need to learn how to, you got to educate them. And I mean, there's really nothing we can do about today's world. We just have to get in there, adapt to it, and learn how to control certain things that happen in those communities. But yeah, that my husband, his cousin, he was stabbed, and he was transgender. So he definitely looked like a woman and talked like a woman and everything, but he still had male parts. And I just think that a lot of times straight men that don't want to identify with being gay, they hurt the other ones because they don't want them to tell anybody. And that's a huge, that makes a huge difference. Like, they threaten them, I'll kill you if you tell. They don't want people to know that they're gay. They want to still seem like they're straight, even though they like men. And it causes a lot of violence because they really hurt those people.
Yeah.
So, women too.
Yes, absolutely. And the reason I even brought this up is I have just seen so many young people being kicked out over the years. And um, one of my things I always say is, for God so loved the world that he gave his only begotten son, that whoso believeth in him should not perish but have everlasting life. And the focus there for me is love. And so what we do to our kids, it should reflect love, no matter what state they're in. And so, like I said, it's been a tough bunch of subjects on tonight, but we managed to get through it. And I think we gave some really good opportunities for parents to think about. Uh, some of these tools we talked about, talking to your kid, not judging your kid, be willing to spend time with them. All of this information that you gave us, Laticia, was wonderful. Even about the depression, uh, the mental illness piece that goes into the insecurities and uh, guilt and shame. And so before we get off, I just want to share one quick story. Did you know that Maya Angelou was sexually molested as a little girl by her mother's boyfriend? The mother's boyfriend went to jail for a year and a day. And then after that, he was released. And once he was released, a few days later, he was killed. It's been speculated that maybe her uncle killed this this guy who raped her. Well, she became so concerned that her voice, by her telling who raped her, she was so concerned that he died that she stopped talking because she just felt like, okay, forget it. I'm not going to talk anymore. And so for years, at least 5 years, she wouldn't talk. So one of her teachers, Mrs. Flowers, began to have her read poems to her, and different literacy opportunities came about. And gradually, after 5 years, Maya Angelou got her voice back. And so my purpose for even sharing this is, many people who we consider great in our community, in our country, have suffered from sexual violence, sexual assaults. Some of us have lost our voice. Others of us had to get the voice back. But that's what I loved about Maya Angelou. Not only did she get her voice back, she ended up at the White House and everywhere else around the world and did great things. I love her poem, Phenomenal Woman. I love another poem,
Yeah.
And Yet I Rise. And, it has a little snap in it. So I love that. She got her voice back. And I want to encourage everybody that hears this on tonight, get your voice back. You can receive healing. God is available just for you. If you need counseling, get it. It's okay. You owe it to yourself to get therapy from a Christian counselor that can help you. One of the things I wanted to share with you is that there is a national hotline because I know that every 68 seconds, another American is sexually assaulted. Isn't that amazing? Every 68 seconds. So I just want to encourage everybody to contact RAINN, RAINN, and they have a national um, organization that can help you immediately with resources if you have been sexually assaulted. And we didn't even talk about the rape kits. People feel so violated. They've already experienced rape. Then they have to go to the police department and be re-traumatized and go to the hospital and do the rape kit. And then the rape kits are never even looked at. They don't go in. So recently there has been some legislation that has demanded that the rape kits be looked at and identified because it was just a backlog. So it goes back to what I said at the beginning. It's so sad that over and over again we are re-victimized instead of the perpetrator being attacked. It's the victim that has been attacked. So, Laticia, thank you so much for being with us on this evening. And here is the help hotline. It is 1-800-656-HOPE. HOPE, 1-800-656-HOPE or 4673. And that's the National Sexual Assault Online Hotline. All right, ladies and gentlemen, this has been a blast being with the one and only Laticia Bell Hernandez. Would you have some closing remarks for this evening?
The only thing that I could definitely say is pay attention to your children. Love your children and accept them for who they are and help them to strive to become better. Pay attention to the signs.
Okay. Well, thank you. You did a marvelous job, Miss Hernandez. This is Dr. Evelyn Hill with Shades in Justice podcast and radio show. We'll see you next time. You can always find me at www.drevelynhill.net.